Beginning with this year's elections, voting gets a whole lot easier.
Your mailbox is your ballot box.
Your ballot packet comes to you in the mail.
But only if you're a registered voter. If you need to register or update your address, do it today at elections.hawaii.gov.
Look for your free Hawaii elections guide in the newspaper or at these locations statewide.
The deadline to register for the general election is October 5th, so don't delay.
Hawaii votes by mail.
Well, aloha and happy Wednesday. I'm Ryan Kalesuji, joined by Yanji Denise. This is Spotlight Hawaii. Of course, we want to thank the Office of Elections for bringing you this conversation. Again, remind you that the general election is coming up and that there is still time if you have not already registered to vote in the upcoming general election. Make sure you do so by October 5th. You saw the information there. You can head over to elections.hawaii.gov for more information. And stay tuned here as we'll continue to present you more information about the election, including some great conversations that we'll have with some of the candidates that's to come. But today, Yanji, we have a guest that's always popular here on our program.
That's right. Right now, we have the acting director of the Department of Labor and Industrial Relations. That, of course, is the office that handles unemployment claims for the state of Hawaii. When we first started this broadcast back in March, Scott Murakami was kind enough to join us basically every Tuesday, and he answered a floodgate of floods and floods of questions. We see some questions coming in already, and we are happy to take those. So we're going to get down and really drill into this with Anne Perreira-Eustaquio. She's joining us now from the Department of Labor and Industrial Relations. She is the acting director. The first things first, let's center our shot so that we can see your whole face.
Sorry about that.
No, we so appreciate your time, and we already see all of these questions coming in. So let's just start with the basics. First off, good morning, and please tell us where we're standing now in terms of the number of claims being filed.
So good morning. Thank you for having me. We have two different programs that you're probably referring to, our regular unemployment compensation program, as well as our PUA program. So we have different numbers depending on what program we're going to be discussing. For the regular unemployment compensation program, we have an outstanding pending amount of a little over 10,000 claims. We actually brought in over 275,000 applications for unemployment compensation. We've paid out a total of 169,000 claims, or completed 169,000. And overall percentage rate of completion right now is 96% of claims have been worked on and a decision being made on them. On the PUA program, we brought in a little over 115,000 applications for PUA. We have different figures because we've denied quite a bit of claims depending on the fraud activity under that claim, or someone who didn't qualify because of a COVID-related reason. So we have 75,000 claims that were denied from the 115,000, and we're currently paying 30,000, a little over 30,000 claimants PUA benefits. We have a total of about 13,800 claims that we're still sifting through to determine whether they are eligible for benefits or not.
You know, one of the things that we have seen is just, of course, the rapid increase of people that were filing claims. We do have a graph that kind of signifies some of this, and we'll bring this up right now. What are you seeing in terms of just the overall volume? As we can see, that spike certainly went up, but it seems like it's staying pretty consistent here as we look at the weeks claimed and the statewide total.
Yeah, so it looks like our claims are trying to sort of level off for pandemic unemployment assistance. But what happens is with the pandemic unemployment assistance is now that more and more individuals may lose their self-employment, they may be hopping on to PUA in the next coming weeks.
Okay, and of course we have audience questions coming in. We're going to get to as many as possible. Ash May says, how many examiners do you have on Oahu? I have been pending for over 16 weeks and waiting for a call. I know that when you first had that big surge of claims, they stood up even the convention center. We even had state lawmakers and some staff in there. But what does the call center look like, and how many people are actually going through those outstanding 10,000 and the new ones coming in?
Right now, the Hawaii Convention Center is still being utilized by the Unemployment Insurance Office. It was a call center as well as a processing center back in April when we spun up the center. It is now currently just a processing center. No call center is being none of the calls are being handled at the Hawaii Convention Center. All calls that come in are being referred to all of the local claims offices statewide, depending on what island you live on. And we have spun up a convention center group that's working on what we call separation issues. So an individual claimant has an issue depending on whether they voluntarily left, had misconduct, and was released by an employer, or what we've been seeing is what we call a DNA, did not accept. So these past weeks where they were filing their claims, they denied work by an employer. Those are what we call separation issues that need to be looked at by an adjudicator. And those issues need to be worked on through fact-finding through an employer as well as the claimant. Federal statutes require us to follow particular protocols to make determinations and to give each individual, the employer as well as the claimant, due process for appeals. So we are working through those now.
So in terms of the call center, so do you still have, I know you said the convention center is still a place where you're working. Does that mean that there are still all those people volunteering, or has this been pared down to just the unemployment office's staff?
It has pared down greatly, but we still do have volunteers who come on a daily basis to help with the processing of claims.
You know, earlier this week, we did hear of an announcement of the $300 that will be coming through in sort of this next round of support. You know, Kenneth is asking, when will we receive the $300 plus up? I had been receiving the $600 plus up till July 26. When will that sort of begin rolling out, and what will that, you know, additional $300 look like moving forward?
Right. So the $300 will be retroactive to the week of August 1st. Right now, we've been approved for 3 weeks of payments through FEMA. We are working on obtaining an additional week approval for benefits. And those payments right now are being worked out through our system. So it's a whole brand new program. We cannot use the same application that was used to pay out the $600 benefits. So the IT team is now working on programming a brand new system to pay out the $300.
So if you reconnected with your employer since then, but you still, if it is from August 1st, you know, let's say you got a job, I don't know, the first week of September, then you still do qualify because you were unemployed in August, but you will have to reapply. Is there an application that's up yet, or when do you anticipate that being up?
So individuals still have to meet eligibility requirements. So one of the eligibility requirements is that they self-certify that they were let go because of a COVID reason, because of the pandemic. The other is that they receive $100 or more of their weekly benefit amount. And so we are going to be announcing through a news release as well as through a mass email to let claimants know that they can come on and actually do their self-certification before payments start.
All right. Another question that we have from Melcher and Murley is, how about furloughed workers? Is it qualified for the new program? How does those who maybe have been furloughed, how does that sort of impact, and what does that process look like for those workers who maybe have not necessarily been terminated altogether?
So they could be eligible as well, as long as they meet the eligibility requirements. So if they worked during that week, we would look to see what their weekly benefit amount should have been for that week. If they're going to receive some kind of benefit from unemployment insurance, then they would be eligible as long as it was a COVID-related reason.
I'm seeing a lot of questions about that $100 threshold here. So just to be clear, you have to be getting at least $100 in benefits to qualify for the plus up.
Your weekly benefit amount has to have been qualified as $100 or more.
And that is for PUA and unemployment, or is this program just for people who are on traditional unemployment?
So for PUA, the minimum you can receive is $263.
Okay.
So everyone on PUA would meet the $100 minimum requirement.
Okay, got it. You know, we are Of course, yeah, getting a lot of different types of questions. So we're just trying to get through as many as we can. What about, so for these people, what would be your message, I guess, for those who have been waiting? We are seeing people who are saying they've been waiting for 6 weeks, some saying for 3 months, still haven't had any connection with the office or have not been contacted by someone from the department. What would be your sort of advice to these people in terms of how they navigate through getting these claims filed?
So if they are waiting, they probably have what we call a separation issue on their claim. So a adjudicator is assigned to handle all adjudication issues on those separation issues, and they will be contacted by an adjudicator. If it's for another reason, we have the processing staff who are going through all the claims consistently to find out why a claim would be held up, if it would be held up. And if it was a clean claim, it should have gone through, it should have gotten paid, and they shouldn't be having any problems since the system is working optimally now.
Okay, I want to bring in Christine Donnelly's question from at 1037, Ryan. She works with the Kokua line, so we always like to try to get some of her questions in. She's asked, how many examiners or adjudicators are there working on Oahu claims? How big is the staff actually doing the processing?
So the islands all have adjudicators. Every island has an adjudicator on their staff. We have about 21 adjudicators who are originally with the department to perform adjudication services. We've brought on through the department 45 new staff members, and we are going to bring on between 30 and 35 additional staff members to help with everything, not just those unemployment contribution adjudication issues, but PUA as well. We also recently just sent out a letter to the Bar Association asking for volunteers to help the state get through the thousands of adjudication issues outstanding. We're receiving a huge reply. Lots of individuals have volunteered to come out and help. And so the first day of training will be this Saturday. So we should have hopefully between 50 to 60 additional individuals helping with adjudication.
Okay, and actually piggybacking on that question, is there any chance that you plan to open an in-person service of any kind? I know a lot of folks have a lot of trouble just with the interface and figuring out how to fill it out correctly. Some of that might be easier done with a person in person, but of course with COVID that is challenging. Are there any plans to reopen the office or set up any kind of in-person service?
Currently, that's a very challenging prospect for us. If someone in our office were to get COVID or to get sick, all processing would stop. We wouldn't be able to make any payments. That's a huge concern to me. I want to make sure that the safety and health of our staff is maintained so that we can continue to provide the service that is highly needed out there in the community.
So in terms of going back to sort of the question of the adjudicators and the examiners that are having to go through these different claims that are still sort of in that process or going through the filing system, right now, I guess the best advice for these people are just there's not really much they can do. They just sort of have to wait through the process and wait till their sort of turn gets or their claim gets picked up by someone. Is that sort of the?
If they log on to their account, they'll see that they have an issue outstanding. It'll tell them whether it's a separation issue or not. And so they'll know where their claim is at any point in time. And if they do have a separation issue, if they know that they voluntarily left for the job, or if the employer let them go because of misconduct, or that they refused work during a week, they're one of those individuals that claim has to be adjudicated.
Dana Lupioff says, please address what happens after the 3 weeks FEMA payments are done. It's already past that limit. We are now into September, and these weeks are not weeks that would qualify for that plus up. It's hard to predict when people will be able to go back to work in the way that they were before. Are there applications in the works? I know you said there was for another week, but are we looking beyond that right now?
So right now, FEMA is only accepting 4 weeks of applications. So initially they asked us for 3 weeks, and they just recently allowed us to apply for an additional week, and we did do that. So we're just waiting to hear from FEMA on whether they will allow states to continue to apply for additional weeks as we move along.
Okay. We have another question here. it says, once I submit for the 13-week extension, how soon will it be approved? Because we know that for some people, they have gone through this extension process, and they have been sort of, also the backdating continues to be something that people are asking about. How long of a process does that look like till it gets, something like this gets approved?
PEUC, which is the Pandemic Extended Unemployment Compensation, is the 13 weeks additional benefits after you exhaust your 26 weeks of regular benefits. That process, to obtain benefits for that process, someone will need to come on and apply. It takes about 14 to 21 days for an application to get through the system and approve so that an individual can receive benefits.
You know, I'm just reading through a lot of these comments and people just feel general frustration. What would you say to folks out there? I know that, you know, this is trying for everyone. And, you know, obviously, if you had your way, you would pay them all right away. But what are some things as they go back and they start to file for these additional benefits? What are some common mistakes so that that they can not, you know, run into as they file those claims for that $300 and beyond?
Right. I feel for these individuals as well. So I could tell you that right now, the system is running much more optimal than it did before in the past. So initially in March, when we had an indulge of individuals filing, the system could not handle the load. We've been able to balance the load now. The other thing that we spun up back in March, which created a lot of issues for the Unemployment Insurance Office, was that online PDF form. I don't know if anyone remembers that form, but because our system couldn't handle the claims coming in through the automated system, we spun up a PDF form, which created many, many issues for claimants as well as our unemployment insurance system. So we had individuals inputting data inaccurately with a key punch error, or so we'd ask for social security numbers. We've had thousands of social security numbers that were input incorrectly. We asked for date of births, and those date of births were incorrect. We had claimants filing 10, 15 applications because they weren't sure if it went through. They wanted to make sure their claim was in. So we have taken down that PDF application. That is no longer accepted because the system is now running much more optimally. We're able to balance the load. And so we shouldn't have those problems like we had in the beginnings in March when we first started taking applications for the pandemic unemployment.
And for the people who are waiting, would you suggest that they call every day? I mean, what you know, because it's hard to sit tight when you need to pay rent.
Right. So we are trying to come up with new alternatives for individuals to get through to our offices. I could tell you that I recently reached out to some third-party companies to spin up a call center for the Unemployment Insurance Office. We're hoping to get that up sometime in the next couple of weeks so that we can better manage the workload and have, you know, better customer service for the claimants out there.
Getting back to some of the questions, we have Karine Shimabukuro Garma, who's asked, I have a claim pending due to refusal of work. I did not refuse any work. Does this mean my employer reported to the UI any refusal of work?
So refusal of work can come from two avenues. One is from an employer. So if you are a partial employer, meaning you're still attached to the employer and you may be working several hours during a week or none during the week, but you're still attached and you could be called back, the employer is required to file what we call a LER, a low earnings report, with our office. On that low earnings report, we do ask employers if work was offered, and if so, if work was refused. If work is refused, you could be not eligible or disqualified to receive benefits for that particular week. And so, yes, an employer may have reported to us that work was refused. Also, a claimant is asked every week when they file their weekly certifications if they refused work. Sometimes claimants will accidentally mark that they refused work, even though they didn't. So that may be an avenue that that information came in from as well.
Okay, and right below that, Ryan, there was a question here. The questions are coming so quickly, but there we go, the one from Laverne. There's a large misconception between disqualified and deny unemployment insurance benefits. Please clarify why claims are not inactivated to file for PUA. Can you address this?
So denied is a term that's being used on the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. You could be denied because you do not meet the eligibility requirements for the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance. Disqualified is used on the Unemployment Compensation Program. And so every single week that you file a weekly certification, you need to certify that you've been unemployed and let us know if you earned any earnings and if there were any eligibility issues that occurred during that week. If you had childcare or you were sick or you went on a trip, some kind of issue, then you could be disqualified for benefits for that particular week. Not necessarily that you're not eligible for the whole unemployment insurance compensation claim, but just disqualified for benefits for that week.
Okay. You know what? The other question that we have that some people are asking is about just making sure that they are, as Scott used to say, we're going to make you whole, making sure that what is owed to them is actually going to be accounted for and that they are going to be delivered. What would you recommend to people who continue to be waiting for their claims to be filed or waiting for a connection or someone to contact them? Should they continue to sort of document all of their claims? What sort of that process look like, and how can they ensure that they will get and be made whole for the weeks that they are still waiting in this pending payments?
So I can't promise that they will be made whole unless you mean by whole, meaning a determination will be made. Some claimants will be denied on the PUA side, and some claimants will be disqualified on the regular unemployment compensation program. So I cannot guarantee that a claimant will receive a payment if they're not due a payment. But if they are eligible and they qualify for a payment for a particular week for either unemployment compensation, the regular program, or for the PUA, then they will get their back weeks paid to them.
And would you recommend them trying to document this, and how would you recommend that to ensure that they are, they have some sort of record that will signify this?
Right. So each individual claimant will be given due process. So if a determination is made for any reason, for a separation issue, if they voluntarily quit for no good cause, they could be disqualified for benefits for unemployment compensation. They will then be given appeal rights to appeal that decision and go to appeal hearings. I would keep all documentation so that they can show that they have the information to either dispute the disqualification or to show why they feel that they should be qualified.
And back to that issue of being disqualified, Paula Kiliinui says, if you travel and have to quarantine for 14 days, are you ineligible for benefits for those 14 days? Not just for travel, but if you have to quarantine in general, perhaps you've been exposed, you've been told, by an employer or whomever that you've been exposed. Can you still collect unemployment benefits during those 14 days?
So those are two really different questions. Because traveling normally is out of the scope of unemployment. You're supposed to be in the place of business where you're looking for work. When you're unemployed, you're not supposed to be out on a trip. And that's why we track your VPN and your IP address to make sure that you are in the state and on the island that you are looking for work or are being offered work. And so there is a trip issue that's created if you leave the state or leave the island. The 14-day quarantine is something different. So if it is a COVID-related reason for you not being able to go to work, you could either qualify for regular compensation or PUA. It just depends on the specifics of your case.
Got it. Okay. One of the other things that, of course, is coming up is that we're currently in this second phase of this lockdown. And more and more people are, again, finding themselves having to go back onto the unemployment benefits because of the fact that businesses are closed and not able to operate. What is sort of your advice in this situation where people who now find themselves back having to file unemployment, do they go through the same process? Do they use the same maybe login that they created before? What does that process look like?
Right. So we've tried to be a little bit more proactive instead of reactive. So we sent you some of those charts that we've put up on our website. So there are charts on our website that will allow claimants to view the processes in order to come back and file, reopen a claim, reactivate a claim instead of opening a new claim, which causes lots of issues for them. They come in and file a brand new application, but they still have an existing claim on file, which most of them will. That will create backlogs in their claim. We also have up there how to reactivate a claim or change your status if you went back to work and now are laid off again, or if they went from what we call a partial unemployed individual to a total unemployed individual. So we have some charts up there to help claimants get through the process easier and hopefully provide them with information they need to make the process a little easier for them.
Okay, well, I know that it is very difficult and challenging, and I see lots and lots of questions. Our time is almost up, but before we go, do you have any advice for the people who are navigating this system right now, who may be experiencing some frustration, and just any final thoughts this morning?
Yeah, so I know it's frustrating. I know they're waiting. We're trying our very hardest to get through the claims as fast as possible. We are bringing on additional help. We are bringing on more volunteers in the next couple of weeks. We are bringing on a call center to help us take the calls so we can get to those questions and help those individuals that need to be helped. I'm hoping that the charts that we've put up on our website most recently will help them with the process and help them to get through that process much more easily. We have 5 programs spun up right now over and beyond our regular unemployment insurance compensation program. We have FPUC that just ended in July. We have PEUC. We have the lower wages assistance program that we're spinning up. And we have what you call the PUA program. And we have our extended benefit program that should be coming on board shortly as well. So we have lots of programs that we're trying to keep up and running, and hopefully we're able to service those claimants as fastly and quickly as we can.
All right, Anne, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. We know that there's a lot of demand for you during this time and a lot of work that you folks are doing down there. So I appreciate you taking our viewers' questions directly and spending this time with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I hope I was able to, give the information that they really need to get through this time. I know it's a difficult time.
Thank you.
Much. Wow. So, what really strikes me when we hear her talking is just how different it is. When we were talking to Scott back in March and April, we were talking about tens and tens of thousands of people who were waiting, hadn't heard from the unemployment office for weeks. We know that some of you are still out there who are waiting for people to call. Melody right there says, waiting for someone to call me since May. But by and large, they've been able to handle the vast majority of the claims. There are about 10,000 people, she said, that are still claims being adjudicated, but not nearly the volume that we saw when this all first began. And as she mentioned, they are working to stand up more volunteers and actually get some people from the Bar Association, obviously people with legal backgrounds, to help sort through this because some of these claims obviously take a lot longer than just reading over the application and finding a spelling error.
Yeah, and she sort of mentioned some of the issues, even just from wrong social security numbers or birth dates that are inputted, and essentially, unfortunately, what happens in some of these situations is it sort of just gets flagged, and that's where they are now going through this process of having to go through all of these different claims. Fortunately, it does sound like more help is coming, and of course, we know that there were a lot of help that sort of initially came in after that first backlog with lawmakers and different employees from various agencies coming over to help that office. But because other services are now back and running and some of those state workers have had to leave, they are now having to find themselves to replenish sort of this department with even more additional help. But it sounds like, of course, they are going to be getting that soon. A big question that a lot of people continue to ask is, how can I get in touch with someone? It seems like people just want to talk to somebody at the department to hear and to contest maybe something that is being filed in their claim. But as she said, that they are working to stand up a call center that will be allowed to sort of take these calls and handle this more on a one-on-one basis. But right now, it seems like that is very difficult for them to do as these claims are sort of being handled one-on-one by these various investigators, so to speak, as they go through each of these claims.
Yeah, and also Kimberly Scott has a great comment here. Yes, but high rate of denied claims for PUA, please address. That was actually really striking as well, that I think she said around 30,000 of over 100,000 people were actually getting paid, but many, many more had been denied. And that, of course, is because PUA is a brand new, very specific program for people who are self-employed and not eligible for any traditional unemployment benefits. Unemployment insurance, of course, is an insurance program that your employer pays into. So if you don't work in a traditional, like for a retailer or a restaurant, what have you, you don't qualify for that. So this was really for the Uber drivers and the sort of gig economy people. Maybe they have their own business and they wanted to, they needed assistance. But the majority of those folks not getting it. And then a lot of people commenting about that $100 requirement for the federal money. And I did not know that the federal money was only right now for 3 weeks in August and possibly a fourth week. So that'll help people for sure. That $300 is a help, but it is very limited.
Yeah, and one of the things that she said is they're having to rebuild sort of that process as well. And so they are now looking at standing that service up in addition to everything else that they're trying to do in terms of finding solutions to some of the issues that they had earlier. But she's saying that the program moving much more smoothly than it was when it initially started. And again, we know that there's still a lot more questions coming in. Unfortunately, we did not have her scheduled to come back at all this month for the rest of this month, but we will try to see if we can get someone from the department back on maybe heading into October, because we know that this continues to be an issue for so many people. And I'm sure there will continue to be questions, even with this next round of $300. There might be people who still have some questions and issues with that as well. So we will follow up to see if we can get someone from the department back on next month to answer some of these questions.
Yeah, joining us on Friday, as you know, we are going to 3 days a week now for the month of September. Joining us on Friday will be Corey Rosenlee. He, of course, is the head of the Hawaii State Teachers Union. And we want to talk to him about how teachers are doing in this pandemic. What is it like for those who have started to teach online? What is distance learning like? We also know that there are some teachers who are in the classroom because their students have needs that can't be addressed via the internet. So what is that like for them, and do they feel safe? So I know a lot of parents are very interested to hear the teacher's perspective. As a parent myself with 2 young children, I'm very interested. So please join us on Friday for our conversation with Corey Rosenlee. Toward the end of the month, the Department of Education has given us 2 district superintendents who are going to talk about what it's like from their experience to actually be running these programs on their own. So that'll be interesting to get both sides of that conversation. But again, Corey Rosenlee is joining us this Friday at 10:30.
And again, we want to thank our sponsors at the Office of Election for their help in continuing on in this conversation. We remind you again to make sure that you register for the general election that is coming up. And if you have any questions about voting by mail and sort of that process, make sure you head over to the website that will help you to get more information. And as I mentioned at the top of the broadcast, we will be speaking to some of the candidates in some of the major races in a discussion that I know we're looking forward to. And an opportunity to provide you, the viewers, with more information about these candidates, as certainly these are different times for these political candidates, and the campaigning, as usual, is sort of that playbook has been thrown out the window, and they have to find new ways of engaging with voters. And we hope that this will be a platform where we can help to educate you on their stance in those issues. So stay tuned for more information on that. But again, we'll be back here on Friday at 10:30 with Corey Rosenlee, and then next week, Monday, with Governor Ige. So until then, we want to, again, thank the Office of Election, and thank you for tuning in and for your questions and for being a part of this conversation on Spotlight Hawaii. Aloha.